Were you guys already talking about it? What's it like on the WWE side?
So the reason why that match specifically came up in an interview is because I was watching, and Cody and I used to travel together when he was in WWE and I was in WWE, and I know the style of wrestling that he does. And then I see Cody wrestling Penta on Dynamite, and he does a top rope Hurricane Rana, which is, and it's not a standard, so there's multiple iterations for those of you who aren't deeply versed in this thing, but both men are standing on the top rope, which is a tricky situation to begin with. And then Cody jumps up and puts his legs around Penta's shoulders and flips him off the top rope. And knowing Cody for as long as I've done that, I was like, holy shit. This is what Cody's doing now. This is kind of what you have to do. And my reference point for that was not, this is what AEW guys are doing. My reference point was this. I don't know if I can hang there. That was the thought. As I'm getting older, that sort of thing. But going back to the idea of what was the awareness in WWE like at the time when AEW started, everybody was aware of it. And different people have different takes on it. And the same thing whenever there's some sort of challenge or startup happening, and you have some people who want them to fail right away, and just to prove whatever it is that, like, oh, there's only one way to do this or that sort of thing. But most of the wrestlers wanted AEW to succeed. You watch it because that's better for everybody. You look at any industry, and if there's just one brand that's on top and there's no competition and that sort of thing, that's not good for talent. It's not good for the people who are working on the creative side. It's not good for a lot of those sort of people. So for a lot of us, we were watching it and we were hoping that it would succeed. Little did we know, any of us, that 4 years in, they'd sell 81,000 tickets to Wembley and, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, everybody was watching it and everybody had different opinions. The reality is WWE presents professional wrestling in a certain way, and to the point that they, for the longest time, have been ashamed of even calling it professional wrestling. One of the things that I love about Tony and AEW is that we wholeheartedly embrace the idea that we are professional wrestling, and that there's and that's the great thing about being an alternative, is that professional wrestling has been presented in many different ways throughout its history, and the WWE is just one way that it's presented, and it's a way that not all pro wrestling fans like. And that's something I think that Tony saw, and you saw a real undercurrent in like 2018 in Ring of Honor, and what the Young Bucks were doing, and what Kenny was doing, and what was happening in Japan, and all that kind of stuff. And all these things were starting to come to this like tipping point where Bullet Club merchandise was selling like crazy in places like Hot Topic. It was no longer, the underground wrestling scene was no longer underground. It's like this thing that's frothing and bubbling over, and it's like you could feel wrestling fans being tired of the status quo and wanting something different. And it was just, it's pretty incredible when you just even think about it, about all the right people in the right place at the right time being able to come together in the exact right moment to create AEW. Because if it would have happened, say, in 2014, there might not have been a place for it in the same sense that there was at the beginning of 2000.
No, in fact, I don't think the TV rights would have, because even coming in on our initial deal, the business model really to launch a challenger brand, I don't think it made sense until the rights fees for pro wrestling, even when you're entering as a new company for us, made it possible to do 52 weeks a year live television on TNT and now TBS as well. And, like Brian said, it's a miracle really that all those relationships tied together and there were so many great people available at the same time, wrestling, and also the interest that had come being a part of something, because I felt like I was a WCW fan, but I was too young before WCW went out of business to really drive and see shows and travel. I was a kid when WCW went under. And it really felt like I had never been a part of any other alternative thing. I had gone to ECW as a kid, and that was something really special to me, but ECW also had never truly reached anything remotely close to what AEW in terms of the attendance and pay-per-view and the TV revenues and the size of the business and, you know, not from a financial and dissemination, you know, distribution standpoint.
One of the things when you say get to the next level, right? Over the summer, we sold 81,000 tickets at Wembley. We're constantly in the top 10 ratings for cable. So what are we looking at to get to the next level? What level are we trying to achieve? I would say from a business standpoint, the next media rights thing is going to be the number one thing. So how do we do that? Keeping our ratings high and improving them where we can. There was somebody next to me when Will Ospreay wrestled Takeshita on Sunday, and they said the same thing on Wednesday. Is this the greatest wrestler I've ever seen? and like you just see it, and it's like, you know, so it's fantastic. So is it great matches? Is it this? Is it that? The idea is you can't make big changes because Dynamite's already successful. Dynamite's already, like when you look at the string of things, and this is what we were talking about in WWE. Vince McMahon actually called me one night. I was part of WWE Creative, and he called me one night and he said, what is AEW doing that we're not doing? And so I went back and I watched 8 straight weeks of TV within the span of like 6 days, and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole list of things, right? So what you don't want to do is getting to the next level is to change the things that are already working, because there's so many things that are already working. One of the things that I think Tony as a boss is very good at is being in tune with what wrestling fans want. Like, what do wrestling fans want? Okay, they want this, right? And so there was a ton of hoopla backstage in WWE when Britt wrestled Thunder Rosa in the match that you mentioned, and it was bloody, and there was a bunch of people backstage saying women's wrestling should not be like that. This is horrible. This is all this kind of stuff. We would never do that, except if you're talking about equal rights, right? Letting women go out there and do some of the things that men do, and not only that, that kind of match took Britt and women's wrestling in AEW to the next level, right? So you watch it and be like, oh my goodness, these women are stars, right? So those things to get to the next level, that's what we're talking about, getting to the next level. I think we just have to look at ourselves objectively. We have to find things that, okay, I think we should try this, but we can't mess up the things that have gotten us to this place to begin with.